The silent beginning, when childhood slips away. It starts in the quiet moments between a parent's sigh and a child's held breath. You're 7 years old, learning to make yourself smaller, quieter, less needy. Mastering the art of emotional invisibility before you've even learned to tie your shoes properly. While other children are worrying about cartoon characters and playground games, you're becoming an expert in reading the subtle shifts in adult emotions, anticipating emotional storms before they break. This isn't just childhood stress. This is the systematic dismantling of a child's right to be carefree. Psychology calls this parentification. When children become emotional caretakers for adults who should be protecting them. Your small shoulders learn to bear weights that crack psychological foundations not yet formed. You master mood reading before book reading, learning to decode the subtle language of adult distress while silencing the natural exuberance coursing through your own small body. The world looks at you and sees a mature child, a little adult, a responsible big kid. What they don't see is the cost of this premature maturity. They don't witness the inner child screaming into a void no one else perceives. The silent sacrifices made at the altar of adult comfort. The childhood joys quietly abandoned to maintain household peace. Every "you're so strong and you're so responsible" feels like another brick in the wall, separating you from the childhood you deserve. The unseen burden. Understanding parentification. Parentification exists in two primary forms, both equally damaging in their own ways. Emotional parentification turns children into tiny therapists, mediators, and emotional caretakers for their parents. They become keepers of adult secrets, buffers in marital conflicts, sources of comfort for distressed parents who should be providing comfort themselves. Instrumental parentification involves practical responsibilities far beyond normal chores. Caring for siblings like they're your own children, managing household finances, cooking meals, acting as translators or cultural brokers between parents and the outside world. What makes parentification particularly insidious is its invisibility. Unlike physical abuse, its wounds don't show on the surface. Unlike outright neglect, it often looks like responsibility and maturity. The child appears capable, competent, even exemplary. But beneath this competent exterior, a fundamental developmental process is being hijacked. You're learning that love is conditional, that safety must be earned, that your needs are secondary to adult demands. Dr. Gregory Jerkovich, one of the leading researchers in this field, describes parentification as a role reversal in which the child sacrifices his or her own needs for attention, guidance, and care in order to accommodate and care for parental needs. The child becomes the giver, the parent the receiver. And in this inversion, the natural order of dependency is turned upside down. The psychological impact begins with what experts call role confusion. Children in these situations often don't know where they end and their parents begin. Boundaries blur, identities merge, and the child's sense of self becomes entangled with their caregiving role. The neurological rewiring, how childhood caregiving changes your brain. When children are consistently placed in caregiving roles, their developing brains adapt in ways that have lifelong consequences. The brain's stress response system becomes chronically activated, keeping the child in a state of hypervigilance. They're constantly scanning their environment for emotional danger, reading subtle cues that other children would miss, anticipating needs before they're expressed. This isn't just psychological, it's neurological, wired into the very structure of how their brain processes information. This hypervigilance manifests through what researchers call the default mode network, the brain system that activates when we're not focused on external tasks. In parentified children, this network often shows unusual patterns of activation, reflecting their constant monitoring of the social and emotional environment. The prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and emotional regulation, develops differently in these children. They often show advanced development in certain areas, particularly those related to empathy and social cognition, while lagging in others related to self-regulation and personal identity. Perhaps most significantly, the attachment systems in the brain, the neural pathways that govern how we form and maintain relationships, become organized around caregiving rather than receiving care. Love becomes transactional. If I'm good enough, helpful enough, perfect enough, maybe I'll earn safety and belonging. This neurological rewiring creates what trauma expert Dr. Bessel van der Kolk calls the body keeps the score. Even decades later, adult survivors of parentification may find themselves stuck in survival modes that no longer serve them, reenacting childhood patterns in their adult relationships and professional lives. The adult manifestations. When survival strategies become symptoms. The tragic irony of parentification is that the very survival skills that helped you navigate childhood become the prison walls that confine you in adulthood. What was once adaptive becomes maladaptive. What was once necessary becomes restrictive. Let's explore how this shows up in adult life. Relationship patterns that keep you stuck. As adults, parentified children often become what psychologist Dr. Carol McBride calls therapists without borders. They find themselves drawn to partners who need fixing, who require emotional support, who replicate the dynamic of their childhood. They become experts at reading others' needs while remaining strangers to their own. In friendships, they're the reliable ones, the listeners, the problem solvers, but they rarely, if ever, show their own vulnerability. They've learned that being needed is safer than needing, that giving love feels more secure than receiving it. The unspoken contract in all their relationships seems to be, I will take care of you, and in return, you won't abandon me. The achievement trap. Many parentified children become high achievers, but their drive often stems from what psychologist Dr. Alice Miller called the drama of the gifted child, the unconscious belief that they must earn love through performance. Exhaustion feels like dedication. Overwork feels like worthiness. Constant doing feels like being. They may become workaholics, perfectionists, or relentless caregivers, all variations on the theme of proving their worth through service and achievement. The terrifying thought lurking beneath all this activity: if I stop achieving, will I still be worthy of love? The identity crisis. Perhaps the most profound wound is to the sense of self. Parentified adults often describe feeling like imposters or hollow shells. Their identity was so shaped by responding to others' needs that they struggle to know who they are outside of caregiving roles. They may experience what psychologist Dr. Jonas Webb calls childhood emotional neglect, a pervasive sense that their feelings don't matter, their needs are burdensome, their authentic selves are unacceptable. When asked what they want or need, they often draw a complete blank, not because they don't have wants and needs, but because they've spent so long disconnecting from them. The healing journey, from survival to wholeness. Healing from parentification isn't about blaming parents or dwelling in victimhood. It's about understanding what happened, recognizing the patterns it created, and consciously choosing new ways of being. It's a journey from survival to wholeness, from caregiving to self-care, from performing to being. Here's what that journey looks like. Step 1. The courage to see. What was the first step is often the hardest. Recognizing that what you experienced was a form of trauma, even if it didn't involve overt abuse. This requires validating your own experience, even if others in your family minimize or deny it. Many parentified adults struggle with what psychologist Dr. Christine Courtois calls the fallacy of uniqueness. The belief that their experience wasn't bad enough to qualify as trauma. Healing begins when you grant yourself permission to acknowledge the impact of your childhood experiences, regardless of how they compare to others. This isn't about assigning blame. It's about acknowledging reality so you can heal from it. Step 2. Reconnecting with your inner child. Shadow work, the process of engaging with disowned parts of ourselves, becomes essential in healing parentification. This involves consciously reconnecting with the inner child you had to abandon, listening to their unmet needs, and offering the validation and care they never received. This isn't regression or self-indulgence. It's what psychologist Dr. John Bradshaw called reparenting, providing yourself with the nurturing, protection, and guidance you missed in childhood. It might feel silly at first, talking to your younger self, but this is some of the most profound healing work you can do.